Buonasera a tutti i navigatori, a tutti i lettori in rete. Siamo qui quest'oggi per presentare un libro bellissimo. L'ha scritto Esther Safran Foer. Il libro in italiano si intitola Voglio, sappiate, che ci siamo ancora. Il sottotitolo dice La memoria dopo l'Olocausto ed è stato appena pubblicato dall'editore Guanda. Esther Safran Foer, as we say, Baruch Haba. I loved very much your book, and I would like to start from a word in Yiddish, which your father used to say. This word is Yiddish. I am a translator, mostly from Hebrew, so I can say that this word is quite difficult to be translated because it's all a word. It's not a word. It's not only a word, but it's a word of feelings, of situations. But I think this word is a very well way to define your family history. It's a family history where even the names of people, of places, and the dates are not sure, because you have so many different versions of this name, of these datas. And this comes from the shadow of the Holocaust, which is the core of your story. This book is a journey into memory, is a journey into loss, into homesickness of some places that you have never seen before. And this is also a book full of tragedy, because as I just said, the Holocaust is in every page of this book. Despite of all this, this is a real peaceful story. It's a story where you find a big amount of hope, a big amount of calmness, and mostly a very, very big amount of kindness towards the world and towards the other people. So the first question is, how could you do all this? I mean, writing a book about so tragic history in a so kind way, so loving for life.
It's a lovely question, and I'm grateful that you understand the book that way, because for me it kind of evolved as I wrote, but it's certainly a story of tragedy, but it's also very much a hope that goes into the future. It's about, yes, the kindness of people who helped me on my journey, the kindness of the Ukrainian family that I found that hid my father. And we email back and forth, and they call me, they write to me and they say, from your Ukrainian family. Yeah. And I write to them, from your American family. The world isn't black and white. It's so many shades of gray.
Yes.
I think taking this trip for me, not only allowed me to see and maybe a little bit understand, absorb the horrors that happened to my family, but it happened to a lot of people. And to empathize more with people on all sides, almost all sides, certainly with the Ukrainians who suffered a lot. But mostly it's a book of hope. And that's the title, We Are Still Here. It was very important to me, and because this is the way I live my life, and it's the way my mother lived her life. Despite these, I can't reverse the tragedies that happened. I can document them. I can find a place to memorialize my family, so that my children and grandchildren and their grandchildren will know that they lived and know what happened. And I'm grateful for that. And they will remember the past, but they will build the future.
What you just said reminded me, in a certain way, the way the Jewish people look at at time, because in Hebrew you have your past in front of you, and the future is behind. And there are two words in Hebrew that define disposition in time, which means that in a certain way you have to cope with your past, because the past is what you can see and you can acknowledge in a certain way. But what you did in this book is a sort of really a sort of peace with a so complicated and so tragic past you have. And I would like to ask you a few lines about the perfect character in this book and in your story, which is, who is your mother? Please tell us something about your fantastic mother.
I'll start by saying she wasn't perfect. As mothers never are, and I'm sure my children say that. She was the definition of the ultimate survivor. She survived the Holocaust. She came back to a family that there was no one. She saw someone wearing her sister's dress. One of my granddaughters asked her one day, she said, "Bubby, how did you know who to trust?" And she said, "Intuition." I don't know how you would define intuition, but she surely had it. She had those instincts. When she left her shtetl in Ukraine, as the Germans were actually marching into the village, she went back to her house. She took her winter coat, even though it was a beautiful day in June. She took a pair of scissors instinctively because she knew how to sew, and a change of clothes. And she thought she'd only be gone for a few days. Of course, a few days was many years. And the instinct of taking those things helped her survive the winters in Russia. The scissors helped her cut up her coat and patch it up. And even, in the United States, we came here. My father committed suicide. There are people who survived, who walked out of the Holocaust, but perhaps did not survive. And he was clearly one of those people. There was just too much for him to overcome. But she picked herself up and she said, "We're moving forward." And I don't remember a day that wasn't like that. One of the greatest gifts I think she gave me was that spirit. Now, I don't know whether she gave it to me in my DNA or whether it's something that I watched her do. And I think that's the importance of these stories, that it tells you that terrible things can happen, but that you can survive, that you can have strength and resilience and meet the challenges of the day, just like the challenges we're all facing today with the pandemic. And one of my goals with the book is that story, the story of strength and resilience, the story of how important it is to capture your family story. Every story has ups and downs. And for children to understand that, and to understand that they can survive those ups and downs, that they can be strong. So yeah, my mother was a quite amazing woman. She was under 5 feet tall. She was seemingly not afraid of much of anything. She was on television. She never was intimidated by other people. And even in her death, it was calm, it was beautiful, and it was with strength. So I am so grateful for the lessons she has taught me. And I'm grateful to have been able to honor her by writing this book. I don't know if she would have been pleased with the results. I hope she would.
I'm sure she would.
An important lesson for all of us, that we can make it.
Yes, you said that she was not a perfect mother. No mother is perfect, but she's a perfect character in this book. And I also believe that we have two kinds of DNA. One is the biological one, and the other is something we cannot define, but stays inside all of us, and this is the story that keeps on going. Right. And from this second kind of DNA, I would come to another Hebrew word which is very important, which is dor. Midor, ledor. is from generation to generation. That is the picture of Hebrew story and Hebrew history from one century to another. I would say that in your family's history, it seems a little reversed, or at least original, since the first who made this journey in the past was your son, and then in a different way, in a more fantastic, imaginative way. But how can you define the link between your research of the past and the one your son did?
I don't know another case where a book fiction helped to drive the real story forward, where there are two books where the fiction came first and the real story came second. Our middle son, Jonathan Safran Foer, wrote Everything is Illuminated, which was published, by the way, as the same publisher who's publishing my book, for which I am enormously grateful.
Yes, they're great.
He went to Ukraine. He didn't find anything. And what he did was he wrote this magical realism story about the Holocaust, about his family. And what to me was so profound about it is that he spoke to generations of people, maybe mostly to his generation, with this story. But his story, for me, generated a lot of people who would call me and say, it isn't true. I can't believe he wrote this. None of this is true. And I'd say, well, of course it's not true. It was fiction. But they said, but he used the name of our shtetl. He used the real names of places, and he also included his own name in the book, which confused a lot of people who didn't understand what he was doing. But it led me to the truth. It led me to people who knew the real story, who 60, 70 years after the Holocaust, when I started doing my research, say 60 years, told me stories that they hadn't even told anyone else. And it was because of his book. He kind of brought this shtetl to life.
Yes.
And then brought the real opened up the real story. And I started to piece together. It was almost an investigative journey. There were times when it was a very emotional journey, and there were times when I was almost detached from it as kind of an investigator. And the book, the work of fiction, the movie that followed it, led me to the real story. It led me to the real place, to find what he didn't find, what he wrote about, but didn't find. And so I will forever be grateful to him for lots of things, but certainly for this book. And the idea that I think the story can be told in so many different ways. Does it matter that his was a work of fiction? I think he emotionally hit a chord with a lot of people.
Yes.
And now I hope that I'm emotionally reaching people with the real story.
Yes, I think that many people, I would say, in fact, many young people that are children or grandchildren of the Holocaust, as we say in Italian, were deeply touched by your son's book, because it was fiction, but it was reality. And it is as nearly as we were waiting for you, for your story, your voice in this history. It's really something that links so deeply the fiction and the non-fiction of your family. And so I would like to talk with you for hours, but our time is so little. And so in this book, there are two centers. One is the family, and one is memory.
Yes.
I think the family, not only for Jews, but also for all the people in this present, in so troubled present, the family is the most important thing. Is the center of our world. What can you tell us about the link between memory and family in your history and in all people's history?
It's something that really became much clearer to me as I was writing. I have bookshelves that are filled with Holocaust histories. And they're very profound scholarly histories that talk about when battles took place, how many millions of people were killed. But there's somebody else's story. And they're about the end of something. History is about the end of something. But when you start these personal stories, these memories, it's about the beginning of something. It's an individual story, it's a personal story, and memory goes from one generation to another. And that became very important to me and much clearer to me as I was writing. That, yeah, sure, I could have written another history about these shtetls that my family came from. But the important thing was that for my children and my grandchildren, who live wonderful lives here in the United States, understand where they came from and carry that with them, and understand what happened to the people they are descendant from. And for example, their grandmother and the strength that she had to move forward. And I think it's important for them personally, and it will be important for them as they move forward into the world and understand where they came from and that they can survive.
Thank you, Esther Safran Foer. Thank you very much. Toda rabah, come si direbbe in ebraico, e ancora una volta Esther Safran Foer. Voglio, sappiate che ci siamo ancora, la memoria dopo l'Olocausto, appena pubblicato dalla casa editrice Ugo Guanta nella traduzione di Elisa Banfi. Grazie a tutti.